analyst, joining us to preview the playoffs. Also, what are the Lakers? Our 5 biggest takeaways from the season so far. 3 moves the Dodgers need to still make this offseason. And we got the top 10 coaches right now in Los Angeles. That's coming up next on the LA Sports Report.
LA is the sports capital of the world. The Lakers have entered their Luka Doncic era. LeBron doesn't just want a farewell tour, he wants a farewell title. The Rams are going to win the Super Bowl. Go, Kings, go! The Dodgers are the best run franchise in all of professional sports. Shohei Ohtani is the GOAT. Steve Ballmer will do anything to get the Clippers a championship. Mick Cronin has to win a national championship at UCLA. Justin Herbert is a top 5 quarterback in this league. College football is just better when USC is good. This whole city has the Mamba mentality. I love LA.
Live from the heart of Los Angeles, this is the LA Sports Report with your host, Doug McKain.
What is up, and welcome to the LA Sports Report. My name is Doug McKain. You can follow me on X and Instagram at DMac_LA. If you're new to the channel, do a huge favor. Hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, hit the like button. And speaking of YouTube, we got the king of Rams YouTube joining us today. I like to gas people up, but that's not hyperbole. That is what this guy is. If you are a Rams nerd, if you are all in on the Rams, you know this guy, Jake Ellenbogen. You can follow him over on X, on Instagram, on TikTok. Definitely, if you haven't already, I know you have, you're watching this show, you're subscribed to his YouTube channel that's dedicated to your Los Angeles Rams. And he's here to talk about the Rams and their quest for another Lombardi trophy. Jake, thanks for rocking with us, my man.
Thanks for having me, D-Mac. This has been a long time coming. I mean, I know, you wanted to get me on, and I've heard it from my audience, like, you guys got to collab. And so I really appreciate it. Just talking with you off air. I can tell there's a lot of respect. I've always had a lot of respect for what you do, with this, and of course with Locked On Rams. I think you do a stellar job. And, we were just talking about it. It's really important to have these shows, in this landscape, because the fans deserve to hear a little bit more than just about the MVP discussion. There's more to the Rams than just Matthew Stafford, Puka Nacua, and Devontae Adams.
No, absolutely. I mean, I can tell you, like, if there's any takes that some of our fans don't agree with on Locked On Rams, if it's Travis, it's like, oh, Travis, I don't like your take about Toots Watwell. Replace Travis with Jake Ellenbogen. Replace Travis. And we're like, hey, come on. We can have different opinions about the Rams. We all love this team, but I really would say no one loves them more than you, and no one has stuck with this team more than you. One of my favorite things, it can be the worst Rams loss, and the collapse a couple weeks ago to the Seahawks. We were hurting badly because everything was at stake, the 1 seed, home field advantage. It felt like you said in the first 2 minutes, I still believe this is the best team in football. I still believe this team is going to win the Super Bowl. For a lot of fans, it's like homerism or copium. For you, you believe it, but you back it up with facts and reasoning, and now you're starting to really see more fans jump back on that bandwagon because the Rams got the outcome that, hey, outside of getting the 1 seed, this is a pretty decent path. You go against the Carolina Panthers team. You're not having to face the Eagles, but just right now, what are your thoughts heading into this postseason for the Rams? And as far as just a vibe check based on where we were a week ago, 2 weeks ago, to where we are today, knowing that, hey, the Seahawks did you a favor, and you're heading into Carolina, beating a team that you're over 10-point favorite against. You should handle business.
Yeah, I definitely think they should take care of business. I'll appreciate it because, I mean, obviously I've been a Rams fan my whole life, and I will never forget losing in double overtime to Steve Smith and the Panthers, when they were in 2003. So this is revenge for me. This is going to be 22 years to the date. So I'm ready for it, D-Mac. But no, look, the Panthers, they deserve a lot of credit for that win, but they also had to overcome 2 4th-down conversions. When I say fluke, I mean things that aren't very likely to happen, things that don't consistently happen. I know a lot of Seattle Seahawks fans took offense to me calling that comeback a fluke. It was. They made their plays and whatnot, but we're talking about a 2-point conversion, which they didn't actually do anything to get it. It was basically Zach Charbonnet picking up the football and tossing it back to the referee. And everybody was on the kickoff, and now they're like, all of a sudden, yeah, by the way, it's a tie game. That's what we call a fluke, right? But that's the thing with the Panthers. I mean, give them credit. They had to overcome that and, have those 2 4th down conversions. But at the same time, when does that happen, right? And at the same time, the Rams had the highest run success rate of design runs the entire season in that game, and they lost. Like, it wasn't even close. No one has had anywhere near the success that the Rams had on the ground. Corum over 11 yards per carry, Kyron close to 6. I mean, they absolutely dominated the Panthers on the ground. I don't know why they didn't stick with it, but that's, obviously another discussion. But I think Rams fans have to feel really good about this matchup. It's hard to beat a team twice in a season. It's a lot harder when you're clearly not as talented as the other team. And I want to give credit where credit's due. The Panthers do have a Giro Evero who spent a lot of time with the Rams, familiarity. You have Bobby Brown, you have Christian Roseboom, you have Nick Scott. There are guys that are on this team, Austin Corbett, that have been in the Rams ecosystem and know what they do and how they, react and all of that. That said, this team isn't hot going into the playoffs. They've lost 3 of their last 4. I don't think that's being talked about nearly enough. One of those wins is against a non-playoff team now, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and that came down to the wire. So they could very well be 0-4 going into this. But this is the thing, is that I was saying, with the Rams in 2018, I called it the panic button bowl. This is going to be the Rams and Patriots in the Super Bowl. And people said, why do you feel that way? And I said, because you're all overreacting. The Patriots lost a couple games and you acted like they weren't going to go to the Super Bowl. And then, the Rams lose that game against the Bears, 15-6, in prime time, and they looked awful. And then the Eagles game, now everyone's acting like, the Rams lost 2 games late in the season. They're not going to go to the playoffs and go to the Super Bowl. It's not always that way. So I don't want to make it sound like you have to be hot going into the dance, but the Panthers are anything but. And in addition to that, they have a negative 67, I believe, point differential. I know there's a freaky stat out there that 3 teams, including the Rams in 2004, won their respective playoff games in the first round being negative point differentials. But we're talking about, and D-Mac, I think you know where I'm going with this. We're talking about a historic Rams team. I know they're 12-5. I know they're 5-4 on the road. And I know that they have the 5 seed. But I think this is one of the best wildcard teams of all time. And I think this is the best Rams team. I've said it. This is the best iteration of a Sean McVay Rams team. And I think you see that. The only team over 500 points this season scored, right? You see a top 10 defense. Even with their struggles, they're top 10. They're also, by the way, if anyone likes PFF, they're the highest overall graded PFF team ever in their PFF history. And by the way, every team that has had over a 95 or higher grade has gone to the Super Bowl. The Rams were number 7 in PFF history. So we'll see what goes on. But I feel like, I compared it to, because I'm a big sports fan in general, and I like my, sports analogies. And I compared it to, okay, the Panthers won the first game, and the Rams didn't see them. It was in Carolina. They're a much different team. If this is on the road, this might be a 20-point blowout. But they're a better team at home. They're 5-3 at home. They score more at home. But one thing is for sure, that game to me, and then playing the Rams a second time to me, is like when a Belmont or a St. Bonaventure upsets that big dog in the first round, and everyone's like, wow, that was awesome. They might have ruined the tournament a little bit, because they knocked off the big dog. Because in the next round, all of those 3-point shots are not going to go down. And if they do, that other team is way more built. They have way more of a well-rounded operation that they're going to win. And that's how I look at the Panthers, who don't even have a winning record on the season. I think the Rams are going to win this one comfortably.
Yeah, go off, King. All that stuff, absolutely factual. I think you look at the deeper metrics, they point to a team that is, quite frankly, the best team in football, top to bottom, through the entire season. And if you don't suffer those injuries to Quinton Lake, Devonta Adams, Kevin Dotson getting banged up, Alec Jackson getting banged up, I think we are talking about, okay, this team goes on a run, then they are without question the best Rams team in history. And that's saying something, because that team, full disclosure, I fell in love with the Rams when they came back to Los Angeles, right? But Big Madden guy, that was my squad, the greatest show on turf, right? And I remember that 2003 game. I think it was like 29-23, something like that. I watched it not too long ago, and that team with Marshall Faulk and Isaac Bruce and Torrey Holt, and just, you're talking about some of the greatest to ever play at their positions. Well, now all of a sudden it's like, wait, Puka Nacua is not just a 5th round pick. Puka Nacua is probably the best receiver in football. He finished with the most receptions in advanced stuff, counting stuff like him, and then the uniqueness of the physicality at that position. Then you look at Matthew Stafford, an MVP year. You look at the other side of the football, Jared Verse, what does his career look like 10 years from now? So I think the names will grow into the names of that team potentially, but I'm in agreement with you. Like, this has all the makings to be like, let's put our stamp on not just winning a Super Bowl, but really going down as like the defining Rams team of all time.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly it. And I just think that, you know, you lose that game to the Eagles last year, and you know, you might not have been the better team, because I think the Eagles were more talented, if I'm being honest with you. But we knew the Rams were capable of winning that game, and they should have won that game. And, you know, aside from those chunk runs, I mean, you can't just say, aside from the 3 giant explosives that gave the Eagles, I mean, that's just football, right? But aside from those things, the Rams did their job. I thought the secondary was outstanding. You had A.J. Brown, you had Devontae Smith. They were held in check. You know, Saquon Barkley, they did their thing against him. They allowed those big plays. But aside from those big plays, it's the same thing I was saying. You get laughed at, but I'm willing to be the one to say it. I mean, Bijan Robinson was locked down for most of that game. You take away those 3 big runs, he's probably averaging about 4 yards a carry, right? So that's kind of the way I saw it, is that, you know, the Rams did enough against the Eagles where they should have won that game, and they knew they fell 13 yards short. And, you know, Jared Verse said, you know, he was looking at the guys and he was like, I never want them to feel this way again. There is no way in God's green earth that you can lose that game to Philly last year and then lose to the Panthers in the first round, not even win a playoff game. There's just no way. The Panthers, they deserve credit for that win, 31-28. But that said, you had 2 4th down, you know, overcoming plays, right? You had the pass that goes off a helmet, right, near the goal line. Some things had to happen in that game. And the Rams still barely lost. I mean, they had a chance. So, yeah, I feel like this is a team, to your point, without Quinton Lake. I'm going to even throw Tyler Higbee into the equation. We just saw him go over 90 yards in that game. Tyler Higbee is going to be key and critical. I think he scores a touchdown this Saturday. When Stafford and him are on the same page, that's another safety net. You see Stafford when he's feverishly looking around, he's on his 3rd or 4th read and everyone's covered. And then that's when, you know, he either takes the sack or throws it away, or maybe he dumps it off to Nacua anyway when he's got a guy draped all over him. Well, now insert Tyler Higbee, because he's one of those guys that he trusts. You go back to 2022, like that was the Higbee season where just like, you know, you could tell right away, you know, Cooper Kupp, Tyler Higbee, those were the guys he trusted. I mean, going into that season, Van Jefferson was banged up, you know, no Robert Woods, you know, Odell Beckham Jr., right? It was Allen Robinson. Like, he trusted those 2 guys. He's trusted Higbee. He trusts Puka Nacua. He trusts Adams. I think that there's a lot here, but I wanted to mention the Higbee thing because I think having Higbee back is going to be huge. D-Mac, do you think Kevin Dotson is going to play? Because right now, I don't believe he's going to. They've been saying he's limping around the locker. Like, that doesn't sound like a guy that's about to play. But if he does play and he plays well enough, I would not be surprised if this run game has another Todd Gurley, CJ Anderson postseason rushing performance again. I really feel like they're capable of that, and I'm excited to see it.
Yeah, I mean, that's a major, major question they still need to answer. I mean, anytime Sean McVay's saying it's a possibility, that allows a doubt to creep into your mind. And he's so incredibly pivotal to this team, what they do on the ground, as you mentioned. But also, I mean, you look at Stafford's sack rate, 7.32%. That was the 2nd highest of the year, right? So, I mean, you'll kind of look at what Kevin Dotson can bring to this team from an attitude standpoint. If he comes back, it's going to almost feel like they did make that big in-season trade acquisition that you were hoping for, even though it's just a player coming back because of we saw Dedich and kind of like the trouble that he was in, and you saw what this offensive line looks like when they're cohesive along that group. And just Blake Corum, Kyle Williams, yes, they're not Todd Gurley in his prime, right? But as far as them knowing their roles and what they do for Matthew Stafford, setting everything up, I think that is kind of one of those things you look at as, wow, this is something that happened during the season with the emergence of Blake Corum and the different, he's kind of one cut and go, kind of more explosive. But if you're in the red zone, you have to count for both of those guys. And to answer your question, do I think he's going to play? I think he is, man. Like, I just think that he's going to find a way to get out on the field. I mean, just kind of talking to some people. Yeah, I've heard the same things about limping around, and they're not going to put a guy out there that, even though he's tough and is going to play through injury, is going to hurt the team. But it just feels like with the time off, still able to kind of get through and get that 5 seed. It's tough to imagine this team really reaching all their goals as easily without him. So it feels like he's got to find a way to play. But ankles are tricky for offensive linemen. I mean, let's just call it what it is.
Especially when you have a defensive lineman that goes over and steps on it. So.
No, they're gonna get dirty, man. It's nasty. It's the playoffs, man. You're biting kneecaps off, right? You're chewing on ankles, like things are happening. But that's really interesting, the whole Tyler Higbee thing, because no one's gonna talk about that. We talk about these big shows on ESPN. You're not gonna talk about Tyler Higbee getting those 5 catches, 91 yards. And it's tough to put a metric on chemistry. And there's a clear connection between Matthew Stafford and Tyler Higbee and the big rig. And Stafford kind of going out this way with Devontae Adams coming back. When I ask you this, Puka's been going off, even with Devontae Adams out. We had the whole Aiden Ross thing, and everyone was hating and things like that. Goes out there and has a legendary performance, right? Sure, they lost the game, but I think for Puka, in the back of his mind, he knows that the second he doesn't ball out, the haters are going to say stupid things about anything he's done, right? And the Aiden Ross thing and whatever. Is it the curse of Aiden Ross? I've seen that. But what do you think the return of Devontae Adams does, not just for this offense in the red zone where they've been great with Tay, but for Puka Nacua and the mismatch nightmare that does for defenses?
Well, if there's one complaint I have about this team, and it's really starting to rear its ugly head, it's the lack of guys they have in that receiver room. And I think we're really starting to see it because teams are keying in on Puka Nacua. And to your point, you bring Devontae Adams back and teams can't do that because you can just sit there and you can pretend all you want. Devontae Adams is washed. He's 33 years old. But if he is 100% healthy, that guy is going to make you have to cover. And he's in the top 10 in yards of separation per, route run or whatever it is. So this is not just some guy. I mean, he can still play at a very high level, was going to go over 1,000 yards. I said it before the season, he was going to lead the league in touchdowns. He didn't play the last 3 games of the year, and he still led the league in touchdowns. So he is somebody that you always have to know where he is. And he had 2 touchdowns against the Panthers the last time he saw them. So I think this is actually an added bonus. I think now, the resume he has against Carolina this year alone puts Carolina in kind of this warning mode where they're now maybe even focusing a little bit more on Adams than Puka Nacua. And that really can benefit both guys at the same time, because then what happens when I hit you with a dash of Kyron Williams and then a sprinkle of, Blake Corum? And oh, by the way, now I can run seam busters with Tyler Higbee and Terrence Ferguson. And oh, don't forget, in the red zone, I can go to 8 touchdown catch, Colby Parkinson, or I could go to 3 touchdown catch Davis Allen. This is where the Rams are just operating differently. I don't know why they didn't use Jordan Whittington much at all this year. I don't know why they didn't use Tutu Atwell much this year. But what I do know is that using the 13 personnel and what they have at tight end, they don't have a George Kittle, but all 4 of those guys combined can get to George Kittle's production. And I think the Rams have been living in that, that kind of margin, and I think that's really what is helping them because you have such a, accurate precision quarterback who, think about it, when you give a safety net to, a young quarterback, that safety net needs to be a big target. And that is typically going to be a tight end, or it's going to be a dump off option at the running back spot. But you got guys, like I said, Stafford's going to trust anyone named Adams, Kyron out of the backfield. He's going to trust Tyler Higbee. He's going to trust Puka Nacua. That's a lot of guys that he could just go to in a pinch. Believe it or not, Stafford, and I think you mentioned it, his percentage of actual like blame for the sacks, you mentioned around 7%. I mean, that's basically where he is. Drake May is in the 20 percentile, or 20% range. Drake May has more to do with his sacks than the offensive line does for the Rams, right? So Matthew Stafford is just better at orchestrating the field. He processes quicker. That's what happened when you're late in your career. And guess what? That's why it's not just a talking head normie discussion where I'm just going to take the older quarterback. No. Bill Belichick mentioned this. Matthew Stafford is better because he's wiser. Like, he still has the arm talent. Phillip Rivers could still throw the football, right? Phillip Rivers is also wiser. That's why he was able to throw almost 300 yards against the 49ers off his couch, because that doesn't go away. If you still have the arm talent, if you still have, your ability to see and read the defense, and you're smart enough and you're wiser and you have all those experiences, things get easier for you. Well, guess what? Matthew Stafford has those experiences. He's already been there, done that. He's won the Super Bowl. He went toe-to-toe against Jalen Hurts. And this is why the whole like winning a Super Bowl thing doesn't mean as much to me, because while Jalen Hurts played an outstanding Super Bowl game the year they lost the Super Bowl, Jalen Hurts was not great in that Rams game, right? So we've seen before, Russell Wilson throwing 4 interceptions, but he gets bailed out because of a failed onside kick for the Packers. Brandon Bostic just botching it. We've seen bad quarterback play still move on and advance. But when you have a Rams team that is a top 10 defense, regardless of what people want to say, is a team that gets a lot of pressure over the course of the season. You look at last year, only 38 sacks. They almost set the sack record in 2 playoff games. So, like, say what you will, they have a lot going for them. And then you have your 37-year-old should-be MVP quarterback that can make all the throws, all the reads, and knows when to make a certain, throw. And this is one of the more clutch quarterbacks that have ever stepped on a field. So that's the thing. You have a lot going for you if you're the Rams, without a doubt.
Yeah, I mean, we could get back to the game, the matchup in a second. If you want to divert to an MVP conversation, I'm totally here for that. I mean, whatever we can do for the voters that might stumble across this and listen to us to make the case for Matthew Stafford for the next 5 to 10 minutes, I'm definitely here for that. I mean, the funny thing to me about the whole Drake May thing is you have the conversation, oh, he doesn't have the supporting cast that Matthew Stafford has. And then you say, oh, you look at some of the more metric based stats that like people like myself and yourself probably prefer to accounting stats. And it's kind of one of those things. You use the stats to kind of fit your narrative and who you want to push. But the truth of the matter is against better teams, against better competition, Stafford was better. And I think too, narrative to me is always going to matter in the MVP race. It really, truly is. And you saw that year with McNair and Peyton Manning, early 2000s when they tied. And I'm sure it's going to be a very close race. There's no doubt about it. But the truth is Matthew Stafford has no all-pros in his career until this year, right? Had a couple of Pro Bowls. This, to me, starts to make up for that. Not because I didn't think he deserved those for certain years, but this cements his legacy for those that had any doubt. If you win an MVP, it's like winning the Best Actor award at the Academy Awards, right? It's like winning that Best Picture award, winning a Grammy. It takes your career to a whole nother level. And you have to look at it as saying, this is someone who, as you said yesterday, he didn't know what kind of quarterback he was going to be, dealing with the back injuries. One wrong hit, something can end his career. And he puts together a season like he did with the numbers that he put up. And I look, 35 TDs to 11 interceptions for Drake May, 46 to 11. If you want to do traditional, if you want to go passer rating, they're too close in my eyes to give Drake May the edge there. And I just don't see how, from a narrative standpoint, unless the Patriots were the 1 seed and they maybe went head to head and he balled out and late in the season, but the Stafford name I think carries. I think Drake is going to lose to LA once again. Of course, I'm talking about something else in the rap world, which of course I'm fans of both those guys, but I think you catch my drift on that one.
Yeah, I mean, I understand PFF isn't the Bible, But when I look and I see Matthew Stafford, 47 big time throws and 19 turnover worthy plays, and I see Drake May, 26 and 17 turnover worthy plays, I find it I have a really hard time sitting here and saying, yep, Stafford just has everything in front of him. He just has it all. I mean, let's not forget, Drake May isn't playing with some random offensive coordinator. He's playing with the same offensive coordinator Tom Brady had, right? We know Josh McDaniels and his offense, when things are clicking, it goes very well, right? I mean, and in addition to that, Stephon Diggs is up there in all those wide receiver, and this is the funny thing, is that the advanced metrics are always, used by now, like all these New England fans trying to, push Drake May. They never use the advanced metrics because it makes Stephon Diggs look like what Stephon Diggs is, a former 1,500-yard receiver in his own right. And so they want you to believe that Stephon Diggs isn't the same player. And thus it means like Drake May he's carrying everybody. When in reality, I don't think that's necessarily true. And I understand he can run, but I think we're playing a dangerous game bastardizing, the old school pocket quarterback. I really do. And by the way, the Rams had an opportunity to go out and get Deshaun Watson. Let's not forget that. They chose Matthew Stafford for a reason. Do you think they have a Super Bowl with Deshaun Watson? No. They might have a whole other bunch of issues, but they don't have a Super Bowl. I can tell you that. And so that's the thing, is Matthew Stafford isn't just a pocket passer. And this is where when you start hearing all the EPA arguments, and I love EPA, but I don't love it for quarterback. And here's why. It doesn't take into account what Matthew Stafford's doing off script. It doesn't take into account that Matthew Stafford just had a no-look pass. And that's not just for shits and gigs like, Patrick Mahomes does, right? That's not what that's for. Like, he's doing that to literally get the linebacker who is in his throwing lane out of the way. You want to know why? I know Al Michaels didn't realize it was a touchdown based on the way he called that. I love the guy, but no idea what he was doing there. Puka Nacua catches a touchdown overtime. He is wide open. Why is he wide open? Do you think they just didn't cover him? No. Ernest Jones basically looked like a goalie in a kick, a shootout, and he is just diving in the opposite direction of where the ball's coming because he schooled him. He did the same thing in the Super Bowl with Jermaine Pratt, against the Bengals. He does this. So does EPA take that into account? Absolutely not. They don't take into account those things. So yes, Drake May's leading in those categories. EPA and things like that, they don't take into account the magic of Matthew Stafford. And that is where I get kind of disappointed, where you see those film watchers that are like, yeah, if you watch the tape, Drake May's better. It's like, I don't think you're watching the tape then. I really don't. Because Stafford has some of the craziest throws you'll ever see, and it's all over his tape. And he's making these pinpoint accurate throws. They were using that throw yesterday to Puka Nacua in tight coverage where he has to one-hand grab it. They're using that against Stafford. Like, oh, he had to make a one-handed catch. That's not the excellent thing that you think it is. Actually, it's Matthew Stafford knowing his receiver. Like, he knows Puka Nacua is capable of making that one-hand catch. He threw it exactly where Nacua could make that one-hand catch. It's funny to me because then they'll say, whatever that thing came out, Bill Barnwell was saying how Drake May, oh yeah, you can't take into account. Why am I always told that I can't take into account the strength of schedule? Why? Because it supports my argument. Like, I'm just supposed to lay down just lay down the sword. Drake May is better. You have the argument? Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter that Matthew Stafford's 47 big-time throws is the most in a season since Patrick Mahomes in 2020. If he had 3 more on Sunday, he would have had the most since Drew Brees had in 2012 with 53. Okay? Doesn't matter, right? That does not matter. So, I feel like that has to, come into play. I think also top 15 DVOA defenses, Matthew Stafford having 25 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, 2,600 plus yards to Drake May's 1,400 yards, 12 touchdowns, and 4 interceptions. I think that has to matter. I think the fact that the combined record of the last 4 teams that Drake May played before week 18 was 25-39, whereas Stafford's was 31-33, acting like, oh, they just lost to the Falcons when the Falcons were probably one of the hottest teams the last 4 weeks. That has to matter. I think losing to the Raiders and stop saying week 1 has to matter. You can't tell me that, well, that was just week 1. We lost to the worst team, probably one of the worst teams ever, because they hardly had anybody on their IR and they still were just that bad. And you're going to use that. But then like the whole, well, Matthew Stafford lost to the Falcons in a must-win game. That wasn't a must-win game. That's why I wasn't worried, D-Mac. You know that. I said they still can get the 5 seed and basically nullify that game. And guess what? They did. They nullified it. The only thing that hurt the Rams about that game, the only thing is the draft standing. That's it. It's the only thing that hurt them. So, yeah, it's just a lot of, moving goalposts. It's kind of like the same when the Rams lost to Seattle, and now all of a sudden everybody on the Seahawks side is a rules expert overnight. You know how that works?
Yeah.
Like, it's just, it's regurgitated narratives. I tend to try, like, not purposely, but I tend to try to be a leader where I want to, I want to run my own narratives. I want to have my own, data. I'll always give credit where credit's due when I get that data, but I want to have my own data, and I do a lot of different projects and whatnot. I'm not just trying to regurgitate and repost the same article that everyone else is. And so that's my biggest thing. Matthew Stafford's played against 5 DVOA top 10 defenses. Drake May has played against one of them. And it's funny because, they're going to, and I'll end it with this. They're going to use the wins argument. They're going to use the division argument. And then they're going to tell you not to use the strength of schedule against him. And then they're going to tell you that the strength of schedule doesn't tell the full story about the defenses he's going up against, which I already proved that to be false. But let's just say they're right? Okay, it doesn't tell the full story. Well, the strength of schedule definitely had something to do with why the Rams, historic team right here we're talking about. I mean, crazy scoring offense. We're talking about a team that has an MVP. We're talking about the best offensive player in football. We're talking about a ton. I mean, the red zone efficiency when Adams was playing, that team lost 5 games, and all 5 of them were down to the wire. And you want to tell me now that we can't use strength of schedule because they finished 5th? Oh, win your division. Okay, well, the division winner had 14 wins and didn't have a 500 schedule. The Rams had a 526 strength of schedule, and the Patriots for most of the season had one of the easiest schedules in NFL history. Don't you think maybe that's what contributed to the Patriots getting the 2 seed, winning their division? They got to play the Jets, who were historically bad, a team that didn't even have an interception. Their leading receiver was Garrett Wilson. I think he played in week 5. I think that's the last time he played, Doug. I think it was week 5. Like, that's what we're talking about. Yeah,
and look, I mean, I see an Aaron Judge jersey behind you. The way that we can fix all this, AFC MVP, NFC MVP. Of course, I'm only joking. I like the one MVP. I think baseball needs just one MVP, so I'll leave that at that. But to your point, I mean, I always think about it this way. Like, I try to be as objective as I possibly can. Sometimes, like, the fanboy comes out at me in some of my takes because those are the teams that I grew up rooting for, the guys that I love, the guys that, like, make me happy when they have success, right? How do you make the case for Drake May? As you point out, I mean, EPA per play, QBR, CPOE, I mean, just passer rating, success rate. You can look at that, but everyone knows success rate and metrics and rate stats do not tell the whole story for Matthew Stafford. And I think that for me, I try to be as forward as I can. If there's new data, if there's new analytics, I like to embrace it, see what it tells me. But sometimes I like to go old school. And if you want to tell me that you're willing to give Matthew Stafford the MVP because it's a career achievement award rolled into that, I'm for that. Like, I really am. Like, I just truly am, just because I think he still deserves it. No doubt about it, based on his season. But the name Matthew Stafford deserves an MVP on his resume. And as you point out, you put Drake May in the NFC West, and you mean to tell me he's going to put up those same exact stats, put up those same numbers? I just don't believe that to be the case. And I look at it this way. The eye test wise, his performance against the Seahawks, if they win that game, there's no conversation to be had. They went for almost 500 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. Drake May's not having that game. I think it's funny that Matthew Stafford has exactly 1 rushing yard this year compared to like almost 500 for Drake May. But I think there's an eye test, there's a narrative. And last thing is, look, I hear fans like, who cares about the MVP and this and that? Look, he's only the 9th quarterback ever to have 45 or more touchdowns. And the only quarterback to lose the MVP with those kind of numbers was Drew Brees in 2011. And he lost to to Aaron Rodgers, 46-45. So they were extremely close. And I think that there's going to be the journalists out there, the voters out there that are going to kind of look at older traditional stats, and they're not going to hold they did not win their division. They didn't finish with the 1 seed against them, because I think that's kind of what works for them.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I find really irritating is trying to make this about Cal Raleigh and Aaron Judge. Like, I've seen that argument where it's like, oh, well, Cal Raleigh, he won the stats award, and Aaron Judge, who was the rightful MVP, won because he had all the metrics. I think you're doing that wrong, because also Aaron Judge had the stats, the whole batting average having almost 100 points higher and hitting almost as many home runs is kind of wild. But no, with Stafford, I mean, think about this, right? They will use the argument. And by the way, I know I sound anti-Drake May. I like Drake May. I was probably higher on Drake May and the New England Patriots than 90% of their fan base. I had them winning 11 games. I had them making the playoffs. I was very high on their hiring of going out and getting Vrabel. I think the Titans screwed themselves for the next 5 years, maybe even 10 years. The only good thing they have is Cam Ward right now. So yeah, I was very high on New England. It's not, but like, just because they weren't, like, no one thought Drake May was capable of this. I got to be honest with you. And I mean, I really got to be honest with you here. Drake May had a really good season, but I think the metrics are they're overrating his season. I think now that we've taken because think about how many of these seasons in the past could have happened, and we didn't have the metrics then. So we just looked at 31 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, nearly 4,400 yards. And we're like, that's a really good year. But we didn't think it was. How on earth are you looking at that? The point being is, if the metrics are close, which they are, and Stafford has 15 passing touchdowns on Drake May and has the same amount of interceptions, and your argument is he throws more than Drake May. Okay, yes, he threw 105 more passes than Drake May. Then why did he not have more interceptions than Drake May? See, that's what, like, it's the same reason why I was so enthralled about Patrick Mahomes at Texas Tech. It's like, he threw 600 times. He threw in an air raid offense, and he barely threw interceptions. So it's like, you want to hold it against him that he's throwing an air raid offense and padding his stats. But what you're not going to do is give him credit for the fact he's not throwing picks. That has to matter. So, I know it's a different thing, but I do bring that up. And I know Drake May has a higher passer rating at 113.5 to Stafford's 109.2. But I mean, I really do believe Stafford had the better year. I don't really think it's that close, D-Mac. Like, I know Drake May deserves a lot of credit, and he's number 2 for me, but like 31-8 to 46-8, we can't just say, well, we're not, doing that in 2025. Touchdowns are irrelevant. I've seen that argument. How are touchdowns irrelevant? And also, the thing that I find funny is we get so caught up on the goal line passing when Matthew Stafford has 3 more passes at the goal line, okay? Or 3 more inside the 5. And he has 7 more touchdowns than Drake May. Maybe he's just better at it. That doesn't mean, that shouldn't be a knock on him. That shouldn't be like, oh, he's padding his stats. Ask Russell Wilson if it's easy to throw at the goal line. Okay? Like, that's the thing. It's like, I'm so tired of hearing that. I think it's harder because the defense has essentially another defender. That's the sideline on the left side of the end zone, the sideline on the right side of the end zone, and the sideline in the back of the end zone. Okay. Like, they have 3 defenders, essentially. It is a much tighter area. It's harder to make decisions. I don't think Stafford should be getting destroyed because he has touchdowns and he has success in the red zone. D-Mac, they're not running the ball nearly as well in the red zone like they used to. So they kind of haven't had a choice. I don't believe in stat padding, because if that was the case, then I think Stafford would have got to 50 touchdowns. Like, you know what I mean? Like, why would Sean McVay stop there? Why would he have stopped at 46? What about the times Blake Corum ran in? Why don't you just throw it to Devontae Adams? He's like automatic at that point in the season. There's so many different, things there. But what I've learned is that Matthew Stafford throwing 5 touchdowns against the Jacksonville Jaguars team that is the 3rd seed in the AFC has just been erased from memory. And right after Drake May threw 5 touchdowns to the against the Jets, one of the worst teams I've ever seen, that is the one that we're supposed to be like, that's the MVP. And then when Stafford throws 4 touchdowns against the Cardinals this past week, it's now he's padding stats. It's always going to be like moving the chains, and what it is. But I think the cream is going to rise to the top, and I will not be surprised if the Patriots aren't in the AFC Championship game, and I won't be surprised when the Rams and mainly Matthew Stafford are hoisting that Lombardi trophy.
I agree with everything you said. And what pisses me off, I've heard people like Bill Simmons, right? There's like, you can't give the MVP to a 5 seed. You can't do it to a 5 seed. We've seen in the past guys like Adrian Peterson, right? You can still win the MVP and not be at the top of your conference. But why is it Matthew Stafford's fault? Why should he be penalized because there's a team with a better record it happens to play in the same division as him? If Seattle played in a different division, the Rams, they would be a 2 seed, right? They'd be like the Patriots, essentially. And I just hate these people out there. Oh, it's an old man. Give the old man his award. That's not what it is either. I think everything needs to be considered. But the truth of the matter is it's like you look at Steve Nash kind of winning some MVPs over Kobe Bryant, right? You kind of look back and you look at Shaq having 1 MVP and you're like, hey, this guy's only had 1 MVP. I don't want to look at Stafford like he had 1 All-Pro, 3 Pro Bowls, no MVPs, when I don't think that tells the full story about how good of a player that he was. So that's why this one kind of means a lot to me, because I think it really like just ties a bow and cements his legacy. And you know that, look, of course, I totally agree. And that's anyone that doesn't agree with that doesn't know ball. Precision passing happens inside the 5 a lot of times. And a lot of things, batted balls, tip balls, things getting picked off, like just quick slants. I mean, there's so many examples. But yeah, did Devontae Adams help that? But guess what? Give Les Snead and Sean McVay and the Rams organization credit for bringing in a guy that would work with Matthew Stafford. And I think that bringing in a veteran like Devontae Adams is someone that Matthew Stafford day one is going to have respect for. So of course he's going to get him the football, and that shouldn't work against him. I mean, it makes no sense whatsoever. I mean, it's like saying, oh, Shohei Ohtani won just because Yamamoto had a great start, things like that. No, great teams have multiple great players on it. And yeah, give credit to Drake May, but he's got NFL guys around him too, and he played weaker competition. I think that Stafford's going to win that award. If he doesn't, I'm going to be extremely upset. I know you'll be extremely upset, but I'm going to send this video to all the voters, and I'll clip out all your stuff, and we'll make sure that award is won. Now, back to the 2025 Rams, though. Back to the 2026 Rams, Jake. The secondary, okay? We've seen some inactives with Akello. We've seen Emmanuel Forbes take 3 steps forward and maybe 2 steps back. I mean, we saw the Eagles game earlier in the year with Darius Williams. So anytime the Rams are kind of matched up with bigger, more physical, talented receivers, sometimes it can become a problem if they're not getting to the quarterback. I know a lot of Rams fans, if you would ask them, hey, what keeps you up at night? When you wake up at 3:30 in the morning in a cold sweat, what do you think about? And it's CB1 and CB2. Can you do something to make us feel a little better about that X factor heading into the playoffs?
Yeah, I don't know if everyone's going to listen to it, because at this point, people have made up their minds. PFF actually has the Rams as the number 1 coverage grade in the league. Now, I understand, again, PFF is not the Bible. But one thing I will say, it's very simple to see what the Rams are doing. Okay? It's always been simple. When they let Jalen Ramsey go, they took a switch. They flipped the switch here with their team building and what they were looking for. You have to pay certain positions, but they have identified cornerback as a position they don't need to pay. They feel like pass rush is going to be enough where you can have anybody back there as long as they're quick enough, as long as they're physical, as long as they care about the game. And I think it's worked for the most part. What I've noticed the most is that this is a team that is really predicated on rushing the passer. And I think that they almost are too stunty. They run way too many stunts, and I think it causes too much havoc. I mean, I've seen Jared Verse run into his own guy quite a few times this year. You're trying to set up plays with the stunts. I mean, I know, Brian Flores is the man with that. They do that very well in Minnesota, but I don't feel like they're getting as much pressure when they do that this year. But they've shown some, lately. And I feel like the Falcons game, that's why I didn't feel awful about that game. They got to Kirk Cousins 14 of his 21 dropbacks. And then you look at yesterday, and I don't care if it was Jacoby Brissett, I don't care who it was back there, and I don't care who they played. That Cardinals team wanted to win that football game. That was the best the Cardinals had played probably most of the year since they knew that the season was over, right? And they gave it to the Rams early on. But you saw that pressure. You saw Desjuan Johnson in this Michael Hoyt role. Okay, he's only played 6 games this year. He has a pressure rate of over 22%. That's crazy. Okay, he's probably one of the more productive pass rushers in the league. Small sample size, I'm aware of, but he is looking really good. And I'm glad they got him the reps. I called it on Downtown Rams. I had him getting 2 sacks, and he ended up with 2 sacks. So shout out to Desjuan for proving me right. But he's playing well. You got Josiah Stewart coming off his best game of the year. He looked outstanding. You got Jared Verse. You got Byron Young with a career high 12 sacks on the season. This is good. Like, the pressure's starting to get there. You saw it against the Cardinals. You saw it against the Falcons. You would like to see it get there against Seattle a little bit more. But I feel like, very similar to last year, they're going to ride on that. I think they rode on that last year. It's almost the same thing. I mean, they were playing their backups, but they did play some of their starters against Seattle in kind of that throwaway game week 18. But they wanted to win that game too. I mean, it came down to the wire. It was down to the goal line. Garoppolo incomplete on 4th down. But, you know, Desjuan was big in that game. You know, the guy whose name is totally escaping me from Oklahoma, I think he's now at the Colts. He had a huge sack in the postseason. You know, they had some different guys on that defensive line last year that got going, and then they carried that momentum into the playoffs. And that's kind of what I'm expecting them to do. And when that pass rush gets there, it makes it easier on the secondary. I don't want to take away credit from the secondary, because I think there are a lot of instances this year where, and of course, they're the easiest to blame. You know, that's where the football goes. And if a guy makes a catch, I have to hear about it, especially if it's on number 4. But I'm going to be the first one to tell you, this pass rush was overrated for most of the season. Okay, they were not good enough. And this secondary actually bailed them out on a few occasions, quite a few occasions. And now it's like, okay, things are looking rough. And I think everyone's looking at cornerback and not really looking at where they should be looking, because lately haven't really been too impressed with safety Cam Kinchins. I don't want to just call him out. I think Jalen McCullough struggled, you know, in that kind of star role against the Falcons. I think it hurt them in the run game. I don't know what's going on with Cam Kinchins lately. He's having like the reverse season of last year, where it looked like, okay, rookie mistakes early on in the season last year. Then he came into his own at the end of the year, and you're like, okay, this guy's going to be really good. He started off this season looking like he could be a star, and he's been struggling lately. I want to take you back to that Ahkello Witherspoon interception, and everyone's saying Ahkello got burned. Well, the reality is Ahkello Witherspoon is playing from the trail, and there's supposed to be safety help over the top. It's supposed to be 26 Cam Kinchins. He doesn't read the signal, doesn't get over there. So Ahkello, who's just playing the trail, and Kinchin's supposed to be over the top. The point is that this is going to force Jacoby Brissett, who they realized was starting to lock in on that stud of a receiver in Michael Wilson, who deserves way more credit than he gets. He was locking in on him, and so they were trying to make it so if you cover him enough, you get him to hesitate a little bit, the pressure's getting there, we're going to get a sack. They're trying to cash in on that. It's a simple thing. They do it. Well, Ahkello doesn't get safety help over the top. He recognizes this pretty quickly and is like, oh, crap. And then you see the recovery speed. You see those giant hands that he has that saved their season last year against the Cardinals. And he goes over and he rips the ball out of Michael Wilson's hands for the interception. That was a play where, if you don't know, like, Cam Kinchins doesn't get over, there's no safety help, and it puts him susceptible to getting burned. And if you don't know that going into the play, you're just like, oh, Ahkello got burned. He did get burned on one of them. It was just a really nice play. But guess what? When you go up against like really, really good receivers, that tends to happen. So, you know, D-Mac, I'm not really too concerned with this cornerback room. I understand there are a lot of people that are. What I can't stand and what I can't have is when Emmanuel Forbes is playing on the boundary and there is no safety help. You are the last line of defense. Maybe come up and try and make the play and don't jump that route. You're trying to jump the out route yesterday. Like, there's things like that. You got to play smarter, because that's how you end up with an Eagles situation where they're able to climb back into that game based on those explosive plays. They just picked on him. You know, you have A.J. Brown and you're trying to go for a big hit or you're trying to punch the ball out, not securing the tackle. These are things that I think Forbes needs to work on. Kobe Durant gives up too much. In my opinion, there's too much cushion, right? So, I think that you can really throw against that. But I also think while Kinchins deserves blame, and I think sometimes the corners deserve blame, I think Chris Shula deserves some blame because I think they're quite often they start off the drive looking like, okay, we're going to play this kind of, we don't want you to even, gain a yard. We're going to play really physical defense. We're going to man up. It's going to be that. And then like one first down after like a really hard fought series. And it's like the next series you're seeing them play like 20 yards off. You're playing soft zone. That to me points more towards Shula. So I think that's the biggest thing is that I don't really think the secondary is bad as people think it is. I think if the pass rush gets there, I think they look good, but I also think they bailed out the pass rush. I think it's more so, I think Shula plays some really soft coverage, and I think that's what's been happening. And so I think in the postseason, we'll see how Shula wants to play it. With the way the offense plays, I can understand why you'd want to play soft coverage, bleed the clock, right? And if your offense continues to score every time down, you're scoring touchdowns and you're holding them to field goals, that's a strategy. It might not be your favorite strategy, might be a really frustrating strategy at home, but it is a strategy to winning football games. And I think it's a combination of all of that. But no, I'm actually not really worried about the cornerbacks. It's not that I wouldn't take one in the draft next year. That's absolutely not true. And I know for a fact this Rams team, really wanted to go out and get Chidobe Awuzie, who we saw last night. I'm sure he probably wishes he chose the Rams over the Ravens right now. But, they knew they wanted another guy. It didn't work out, but they like the guys in that building. They trust those guys. And, ultimately, I think it's going to be enough to win a Lombardi.
Yeah, we know if the Rams identify a superstar at that position, they're willing to use draft capital. They're willing to bring in a guy via trade. They just didn't identify that guy this time around. I think you made all the great points. I mean, the fact that this is Chris Shula's defense, it's a system that's designed to not overemphasize the performance of outside cornerbacks and boundary cornerbacks and things like that if it's largely predicated on getting pressure and getting consistent pressure. And for a couple weeks, you didn't see that, and it magnified some of the issues in the secondary. I think it's going to be like a Kel Witherspoon coming back off an injury. It's going to take a while to get fluid to make sure that everything is synced up with him. And look, you saw in the interception, it wasn't underthrow. That he still got to make the interception, right? And he did give up catches, and he gave up 4 catches on like 5 targets, something like that. But still, Wilson, like you said, is a baller. I mean, we're talking about receivers that in the National Football League, talented receivers, if you give the quarterback time like the Rams have been the last couple of weeks, they're going to find a way to carve and find guys and get open. I look at it as an encouraging thing. You got 6 sacks, you get the takeaways. I think Jared Verse still has his best football in front of him. I think Byron Young, my heart stopped when he was on the ground. I'm like, why the hell are you out there still at this point? I almost died. And Poona Ford stopping the run. Braden Fisk, I think, turning the corner. I think really it feels like from a pressure standpoint, a lot of times pressure, there's stunts. But I mean, I'm talking to Michael Brockers on my show. He's like, man, sometimes like it's about just effort. Like sometimes at the end of the season, like you don't realize it, but like you're not from an effort rep, every single rep down and down out going 110% like you're going to go in the playoffs. And I just feel like I hate to say that because LA teams kind of have a reputation for just flipping a switch. But I do think the defensive line, the linebacker play, I feel, and I think that's a astute observation about the safety play, but it does feel like this defense is ready to flip a switch. And if you need to be carried by the offense, then so be it. But I agree with you that the ingredients are in place to win a Super Bowl with this defense. It doesn't mean they're going to be the strength, maybe not, but you can't say, oh, this is just the offense has to score 50 points to win. That's certainly not the case because for most of this season, the big narrative was, oh, it's the first top 10 defense, top 10 offense since 2001. Maybe the foundation of this team is the defense. And all of a sudden they have a couple bad weeks and it's, oh, the secondary is going to hold the Rams back for winning a Super Bowl. So I agree with you. Even though you don't have high priced talent or a reclamation project and Emmanuel Forbes and some other guys that you didn't invest a lot of money in, they certainly can scheme around it. And other positions can help out. And then Quentin Lake, of course, is going to be massive for this team. I want to ask you, Quinn, he's been on your show. What are your expectations as far as what are fair expectations? We saw Kello come back. He wasn't the savior that some Rams hoped he would be. Quentin Lake, a little bit of a different situation. What are your thoughts on Q Lake returning on the impact he can have on this defense?
Yeah, I think he gives you different looks. I'm not going to, sit here and say he's going to play the full game and he's going to be outstanding and all that. I don't think that. I had some people ask me, hey, Jake, you said the safeties are struggling. Could, Quinton Lake come in and maybe play in the back end? I think that's asking him to do too much. I think, believe it or not, in a weird way, even though the star role is a lot more than the safety, I think coming back from an injury, keeping him, in the slot, around the box, not deep, I think that's the best move for him, to be honest with you. I think the best thing, just getting to know him, he's a throw me in the fire type of guy. I'm going to go and ball out even at 80%. And so I think you're going to get some good play out of him. And most importantly, because I get asked this more than anything, what happened to Nate Landman? Did we pay him too early? No. The thing that's so funny to me is everyone continues to say it came after he was paid, after the contract. But they fail to remember that around that time, Quinton Lake got hurt. He hasn't been the same since Quinton Lake. Not the contract, Quinton Lake. Like, let's be honest here. Do you think Nate Landman for a second got the money and was like, all right, now I'm going to mail it in? That's not him. He wouldn't be a team captain if that were the case. But I can tell you right now, in the broadcast, nothing against Landman, but when I believe it was Vilma that said he's the heart and soul of this defense, he's absolutely not. He is not. The heart and soul of this defense is Quinton Lake. We found that out. Anybody wondered, there you go. So, say what you will, but I think Quinton Lake is definitely, he was missed. I think we all knew, even when they beat Seattle, that was a painful win. We knew when Lake was announced, oh yeah, he had it, the elbow, that was not good. That was going to hurt. You might be able to find a way to win. And, you always get the 49er fans like, oh, Quinton Lake is out. We have our whole team out. Yep. But it's a completely different thing. It's a completely different thing. You are used to playing that way because the 49ers are always banged up. Every year we're talking about the 49er injuries. But when the Rams have a specific role like this star position where you need a guy that knows the playbook inside and out, you need that leader, you need that versatility, that body composition, that's Quinton Lake. And the other guy was Josh Wallace, who played very well in relief. But guess what? Josh Wallace got hurt. And we saw without those two guys, the Rams, you could say it's on the Rams. You could say it's on Shula. Maybe adjust. Don't even roll with the star. But it's so much of what they do. They tried to throw Jalen McCullough in there like it was a plug and play. It didn't work out. And we saw, it was a catastrophic thing in the run game. And so when you look at Quinton Lake, you want to know what his, where, in my opinion, because everyone's going to focus, you mentioned Quinton Lake, people think of coverage, right? Right away. For whatever reason, people are going to think about coverage. But guess what, D-Mac? I have the numbers here. Quinton Lake, when he is on the field versus when he's off it. With him, they're number 3 EPA per play. Without him, they're number 11. With him, they're number 7 yards per play. Without him, they're number 20th. And most importantly, Quinton Lake, without him, the coverage is almost identical, believe it or not. Almost identical. The explosives are more without him. That's the biggest thing. They allow more explosives. They were the least explosive defense, I believe, for most of the season. So that makes sense. But it's the run defense where they're actually a negative. They're a positive EPA, which is bad when you're on defense. They have a 0.017 EPA per play and are allowing 4.69 yards per play without Quinton Lake. And with him, they're allowing 3.82 yards per play. They're a much better run defense. And guess where that's going to help? Against a rushing attack that gave you fits last time. Against all sorts of running backs. We're not just talking about Dowdle. We're not just talking about Chuba Hubbard. We're talking about what we all know and what we should be confident they're going to be in the second round. And if they're in their second round, they could be going up against a combination of, you look at it, Saquon Barkley, Christian McCaffrey, right? They could be going up against K9. They could be going up against Charbonnet as early as the first, the second round. And there's still a chance Packers would have to do some miracle things, but there's still a chance they play the Packers in the NFC Championship game. And they would be going up against Josh Jacobs, who's not easy. And, Emmanuel Wilson, who's underrated. So having Quinton Lake back is going to help that run defense immensely. The numbers prove that. And it's quite the sample size now. Without Quinton Lake, they've actually had more snaps without Quinton Lake now than they have with him in the run game.
Yeah, and when he signed that new deal, I was thrilled. I'm a Bruin. I would like to see my UCLA guys getting paid. Everyone said, he lost all this money because he missed a lot of the season, right? And yes, I think, of course, you enter free agency as a Pro Bowl, you're going to get a bigger bag. But I think from the Rams standpoint, now you see what it looks like with him out. And I think his value now internally in that building is exponentially bigger because, as you point out, it's tough to put your finger on all the things he does. I mean, he can stop the run like a linebacker. He can cover. He's versatile. He's a leader. He's a guy that brings that extra juice on defense. You talk about Nate Landman and the contract that he signed. I saw Rams fans, did you pay him too early? He's a linebacker. Linebackers aren't valued like they used to be. Right. And he's paid like a average to an above average linebacker. I'm fine with that. But someone like a Quinton Lake providing what he provides and coming back at the right time, I think it's just one of those many reasons why you can really talk yourself into this path to a Lombardi trophy. Now, I see some comments here. A lot of people showing you some love. D-Mac and Jake the Snake, LFG. This is the link up that we've been waiting for. We got one that says, F the Lambs, F the Turds, bang, bang, Niner gang. First of all, I just would pray to see San Francisco go to SoFi Stadium this time around. So it's bang, bang, escalator gang once again. But I would ask you, what's your dream path to the Super Bowl? Are you a guy that says, bring on the birds, right? Are you guys that just says, there's no one that when we're on our best day that can beat us, bring them on? Just kind of, what do you think of as far as path-wise, starting in Carolina, the way that things play out? We could see some early upsets, which would get the Rams a home playoff game. But just what are your thoughts on just the path to Super Bowl LX?
Yeah, I'm one of those guys that just like play whatever. The last time that I was like, I prefer this was the Patriots. I rooted for the Patriots over the Chiefs because I wanted that, childhood revenge, and I didn't get it. So I'm never doing that again.
You get it this year.
Learned my lesson. But but what I will say is I'll tell you what I think is going to happen. I think the Rams are going to beat Carolina. Then I think later on that night, we're going to see the Packers beat the Bears. I think people are forgetting how close that game was without Jordan Love. And honestly, the Packers just totally choked that game. I think the 49ers are going to beat the Eagles. I do. Even with Alan Eck as their referee. I guess the Eagles are 8-1 and he's an Eagles fan. This stuff always comes out. I don't know how the NFL doesn't vet that, but I still think the 49ers are going to win. And then I think the Rams are going to host the 49ers at SoFi Stadium. And I think they're going to get revenge on that loss. I was there, by the way, when Kyren Williams got punched in the head. Should have been a 15-yard penalty.
Ridiculous.
Replay the down, essentially. Automatic first down. Should have been the end of the game. But regardless, I think the Rams will get the revenge. I think they're clearly better than the 49ers. And they can't do anything to stop Stafford. I watched Stafford both games. I was at both games against the 49ers. I made my trek over to California 3 times this year, and twice was against the Niners. They're not stopping Stafford in the postseason. They couldn't stop him in the regular season. They're not stopping him on the postseason. So I will take that. And then I think Seattle beats the Packers. I think it'll be a fun game, but I think Seattle's just a way better team. And the Packers, without Micah Parsons, they don't have a closer. I think they're good enough to make it past, that divisional. Anytime a divisional game, it could always be pretty close, but I don't think they have enough to beat Seattle. And then I think the Rams, who are better than Seattle, and I felt better about the Rams after the Seattle game, believe it or not. And I felt a lot better about the Rams after the Seattle and 49ers game on Saturday. I think the Rams will win that game in Seattle. I don't care what the score is as long as the Rams are the one winning. And I do believe that's what it'll be. That defense will look a lot better than it did in the second game, I think, Seattle. But I also think the Rams will look a lot better having to go up against Quinton Lake. So I think that's the biggest thing. Also, Devontae Adams will be back. And I think the Rams, when it's all said and done, will be playing the Houston Texans in the Super Bowl. It'll be the 5 versus the 5. I don't know how many times the Rams have played in the playoffs. Every team that they played in the playoffs, they played during the regular season. But that's what I have, D-Mac. I have the Rams playing Carolina again, the Niners a third time, Seattle a third time, and I have them playing Houston, which they started off the season with.
That is a nice pull. The Texans is a little bit of a shocker. CJ Stroud coming, that defense absolutely dominant, and that's what plays up in the playoffs. I mean, that is a refreshing take. I mean, to hear the Texans. I mean, look, well, from our side, I love the path that you point out, and nothing gets the Rams going. And look, sure, you have a lot of 49ers fans there, but the more times you have that matchup, I think it reduces by a couple thousand. Next year, win another Super Bowl, New Jerseys, Puka Nacua, Matthew Stafford. I mean, that's how you win fans over. And look, I heard something that I really love lately about the Cowboys and the Niners. People calling the 49ers the Red Cowboys. Have you seen that? Like, that's the new nickname for the 49ers. Call them the Red Cowboys. Their drought's 30 years. Dallas's drought is 29 years. And yeah, they do not want that smoke. I think for me, of course, that Seattle game, absolutely. This team deserves to play each other. They deserve to play each other 3 times. I mean, they deserve, like, some movies, like, okay, we'll give you a sequel. It better be really good to do a third installment, right? They deserve to play 3 times. And I think about this Rams team. We've seen them coming out slow. Sometimes they'll play with their food. Sometimes they might not execute early in the game. I love them locked in and focused on the road against Seattle, knowing what happened, feeling that burn, feeling that sting of that overtime loss. The Rams were 323-1 in games where they had a 15-point or more lead in the fourth quarter. So, that's going to sting. But the Texans and the Rams in the Super Bowl, that is Jake Ellenbogen's pick. I love that pick. Give me an X factor for this team. It can be a player, it can be a unit. What do you think is going to be the X factor for this run?
Man, I was so convinced I was going to go with Terrence Ferguson, and he very well still could be, but I think it's going to be Tyler Higbee. I think Higbee knows deep down this could be his last year as a Ram. He's the greatest tight end in Rams history. I do think Terrence Ferguson is going to have his number when, over the course of the years. I really think the Rams have a potential superstar in him, and I think people are going to see that as the years go on. But for now, Tyler Higbee has had it rough, okay? He's had a lot of injuries. He's fought through. Mind you, he's one of the only players that played every single one of those painstakingly brutal 2022 games. So, he's been here. He was here, the first year they moved back to LA. That was brutal to be 3-1. Case Keenum's on with Ryan Seacrest. They're eating victory waffles or whatever. And then the next thing you know, they don't win a game until later on. I actually saw their last win against Bryce Petty and the Jets. Anyway, so I think Higbee, who didn't get a chance to play in the Super Bowl, I think he's going to get a chance to be a hero in this. That is my prediction. I think he's going to be the X factor. I think he kind of told us yesterday, D-Mac, like, it might take Quinton Lake a little bit. He's a little rusty, right? It might take a Keller Witherspoon a little bit. Tyler Higbee was ready to go. He was ready from the jump. And I know he had a drop, but he also caught that seam buster over the middle, took a shot, still hung on. He got his touchdown. I don't think he's done scoring touchdowns. He was so key and critical to that team last year at the end of the year when he came back. I saw it at the Jets game. I knew it right away that they're going to need him. They love him in that locker room. And it's just such an easy pick for me because of how often they're now using 13 personnel. I think Higbee is going to be the X factor. And I really do believe that when it's all said and done, we'll be looking at Tyler Higbee like, if this was his last year as a Ram, we're going to remember this really fun postseason run.
Yeah, football does not like to see Tyler Higbee coming because it is going to get spiked. He is going to spike that into the turf. And I think that I absolutely agree. It almost felt like he was like auditioning for the playoffs, right? With the game that he had. Say, don't forget about me. And you mentioned he had that drop, but 5 catches for 91 yards. And the chemistry that Sean McVay knows that he has with Matthew Stafford, I think plays a vital role. I think you're going to see, I could see, Terrence Ferguson just stretched down the seam. They get him so wide open. He really doesn't drop the football too. So I think he kind of plays that hybrid role. I can see him making a couple big plays in Seattle. And then you mentioned Colby Parkinson, a guy that people want to throw the bus label on. We're talking about 3 tight ends that could have multiple touchdowns in a game. Davis Allen really could if the guys in front of him weren't better off where they're at. So I totally agree with you. I think that you're looking at a team that has to win the wild card round, the division round, the championship game, the Super Bowl. There's going to be moments for all these guys if things go their way. You're going to get the Devontae game, you're going to get the Puka game, the Kyrie and the Blake Corn game, if everything goes right. But I think that is the area that teams and maybe people out there that don't know the Rams are going to be surprised about. Like, wow, the tight end's doing work for the Rams. And I couldn't agree with you more, but we could keep it here all day and talk Rams football. Got to get you out of here on some fun stuff, though. Give me your Rams Mount Rushmore. I don't know if you've ever been asked this question. You probably have, but your 4 favorite Rams of all time. Not asking for the greatest, because we know, Deacon Jones, we could throw out the greats, right? But who are what's your personal Rams Mount Rushmore?
Oh man, that's a good one. All right. Well, I'll start off with this. Matthew Stafford is on there for me. I loved watching him with the Lions. To see this comeback for his career, to get this opportunity. D-Mac, there is a tweet out there that I had in 2015. I wanted him to be the Rams quarterback. So I've wanted him for a long time. And just such a likable guy, and for whatever reason has always been underrated by the media. He's the only quarterback, fun fact, to throw 3 touchdowns and win the Super Bowl and not win Super Bowl MVP. And I think it had less to do with what Cooper Kupp did and a lot more to do with the fact that we were talking about Matthew Stafford, because any other quarterback, didn't matter about the 2 interceptions, neither of which I blame him for, they would have won the MVP. But be that as it may, Stafford's number 1. Number 2 is Kurt Warner. I had the pleasure of meeting him at Giants training camp when the Rams stupidly let him go. And then he ended up coming on my show years later. Have a lot of respect for him. I think those are the 2 best quarterbacks in Rams history. I can't believe Stafford ended up surpassing him, but I do believe he has. So those are those 2. Number 3 is Marshall Faulk. I had an opportunity to interview him, which was a bucket list thing there. But to me, and it's always, people will always push back on this. Marshall Faulk to me is the most complete running back of all time. He might not be the best running back of all time, with the yards and all of that. But there is not a running back that was more complete from the football acumen, just everything that he could do in the receiving game. He was like having another quarterback on the field. So he would be number 3 for me. Number 4. I'm going to go with kind of a wild card here, because I've got so many that I could go with. I'm just going to throw this one out there. I'm going to say Leroy Irvin. And the reason why is because he invited me to his 60th birthday party, and he is a Jayhawk, a Ram. I mean, it's all right there. And fun fact, before Jared Verse had that touchdown, Leroy Irvin was the last one to block a field goal and return it for a touchdown for the Rams. So there you go. That's I know it's surprising, but man, Leroy Irvin is an awesome dude. If you ever get a chance to talk with him, or if you have, then he's been on my show a few times. Just the Iceman, just a legit dude. And again, there's so many. Like I interviewed Torrey Holt, loved Witt, interviewed him. I interviewed Holt and Bruce. There's so many that I've had the pleasure of talking to, and there's so many that I've had the pleasure of watching. Todd Gurley would be up there for me, but I just feel like I'm going to give the nod to the guy that invited me to his birthday party.
That's such a nice pull. Leroy Irvin, did not expect that. Would have had probably written maybe 100 names before that one, but I'll never forget the ad with him and Vince Ferragamo at End Zone Mortgage at Anaheim Hills where they're working at. They got that thing together, but hey, he's an all pro, man. And in his day and age, he was absolutely nasty. There's no doubt about it. How about this? If you could only wear one Rams uniform for the rest of your life, what player would it be?
Oh, I'm gonna go with Stafford.
Number 9, baby.
Number 9 looks so sick. And to me, that's the guy that I watch that dude every Thanksgiving, every single week, because I was a huge fan of his. And I watched him constantly get called Stat Padford, and he was always blamed for having Calvin Johnson. And he was always the 0-3 in the playoffs when they should have beat Dallas. There was a bad call in that game. And then, he put up 4 touchdowns in his first ever playoff game against the Saints. And that was a really good Saints team. And all anybody focused on was the loss. To see him make everyone eat their words his first year, he comes to my favorite team. I mean, it's a no-brainer for me, Matthew Stafford.
So on behalf of Rams fans everywhere, like, we need you to tweet Joe Burrow to the Rams. I mean, who else are you going to do? Caleb Williams. I mean, who else we got here? Some future picks. Clearly, we got Jake Stradamus in the mix. I love that. I hate the fact that Stafford's never been able to play in those Rams throwbacks. I hope he comes back and they do it next, because they've been wearing the new ones the entire time. I want to see him once in that throwback uniform.
A good point. He never has.
I need to see it. I mean, I've seen Photoshops and I like it and I think it'd look great, but that's a fire list. And the great Jake Elbow, you're so gracious with your time. We could do this all day long. We hope to have you on at some point again during this deep postseason run. And if you're a Rams fan, you know where to go. Jake Ellenbogen, subscribe to his channel, listen to his show. Don't just watch the Rams, learn about the Rams. Get all the way to the 1% crowd that knows everything about this football team. This is the guy to help you do it. So Jake, thank you so much. We appreciate it. And hey, man, we could not hope for you. We want you to be right. I mean, Rams, Texans. All right, who's going to win the MVP? Will Stafford get the MVP?
Stafford will get the MVP. That's actually, I've just kind of checking around the people that have connections that I know, and it sounds like Stafford will win the MVP and JSN will win Offensive Player of the Year. One thing I'll say is you can't, I don't think that they both should be penalized, Puka Nacua and Stafford, but you can't be the voter that doesn't vote for Stafford or Nacua. Like, that to me is insane, because that's the only argument I think people are making against Nakua's Offensive Player of the Year is that he had potentially the MVP of the league throwing him the football.
Yeah, they can't get iced out. Absolutely not. And especially with the finish that he had. Could not agree more with Jake. You are the man. We appreciate you. And definitely go follow you on Twitter. Go to the YouTube channel. We'll see you. We'll check in with you later during this deep run. You heard it first. Rams over Texans. Stafford MVP. Jake Ellenbogen, you're the man. And we'll see you soon, my man.
Thank you, D-Mac. Appreciate you.
You got it. Well, there he goes. The great Jake Ellenbogen blessing us with top-level Rams content, Rams knowledge, Rams analysis. And I couldn't agree more, man. Tomorrow, Lakers, Dodgers, UCLA. You got a jam-packed show tomorrow. Also, find us over at Dodgers Nation for Dodgers Dugout Live. That's going to do it. Hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, hit the like button, and we'll see you next time. And remember that there's a lot of great cities out there, but LA is the city of champions.